wrote the same story as a novel and a graphic novel, and today I want to talk about why. And if you think it's a very weird thing to do, well, there is more. Actually, before the novel, there was another graphic novel that was the original first version of the story. I was an artist my entire life. My earliest memories from my childhood was drawing. I was always in love with creating stories and characters and creating the narrative that doesn't end on one piece of artwork. I love the idea that these characters can continue living in other illustrations, and that creates this big story. So when one particular story stuck in my brain for a long time, it was no-brainer to make it in a comic format. However, at this point in time, I was pretty young. I was maybe like 13, 15. And even though I've been drawing my entire life, I wasn't a good artist yet. Still was in art school, I still was learning quite a lot about art, and it took me a long time to create a comic page. When I started drawing a comic, I quickly realized that, oh my god, it's gonna take me hundreds of years. After 4 months of non-stop drawing, I was just 4 pages down. And at this point, I kind of realized that the story is gonna be very long, and I realized even back then that math ain't mathing, and it's not gonna work. Like, we'll never be able to finish this comic. At that point, I decided I'm just gonna write the story as a novel because it's definitely gonna be faster. And it was very fast. I wrote this book in maybe a year and a half. It helped that I knew the story already, however, it was still a learning curve, and it was interesting to learn how to write proper novel. Then after I wrote it, it took me around another year with an editor to properly prepare it for publishing. During this time, I was actually writing the second part of this novel. Then this book comes out, and I realized something. Since I wrote this first part of the story, I grew up. I've been writing this story from the ages of 15 to 17, and this book came out when I was 18 years old. By the time I finished the second part, I've been in my 20s. The story I've been writing has matured with me, so much so that it didn't match the first part at all. And it was a problem because now that I was writing part 2, I didn't like it because I knew it didn't match the first part of the story, so the story was disjointed. I didn't want to write part 2 in the style of this book because at this point I was older and I could not be in the place where this book was written in. It was a pretty difficult time in my life because I had to realize that my book has to be scrapped and had to be started over. But the good thing is, at this point, I was a good professional artist. Working as an artist professionally, at this point, I've been drawing my entire life more than I was ever writing. At this point, I actually was pretty confident that I'm able to write a story in the comic form fast enough. Now, I made this decision to switch 12 years ago. And oh boy, it has been a learning curve, and I had to redraw my comics several times too. But it is done now, and it's coming out on December 21st.